But so it was one of these trips where I was in Kilifi in Kenya, and I was leaving Kilifi to Nairobi, Kenya, and I took this airline called Jambo Jet. So I had spent all my money, all my Kenyan shillings, and in Kilifi, I was looking forward to, maybe getting more cash when I get to Nairobi or changing money or something like that. So I got to the airport and I was really thirsty, like really thirsty. I couldn't afford to. You know how the capitalist economy is, like everything is so inflated even at the airport. So you can't even afford to buy water as a working class person. So yeah, I'm at the airport, I couldn't afford water because water was like at the airport for 400 shillings. And I think I was left with just 50 shillings. So I waited till when I get inside the plane and maybe I'll ask for water to drink. And here I am inside the plane and I got it gently. I'm like, oh, excuse me. I asked the air hostess, please can I have water? I'm really thirsty. I'm like, okay, no problems. So I went to my seat, back and forth. She came back with water. I drank the water and I felt really comfortable, ready to, we're already flying anyway. So that's how I'm just seated calmly, and then I heard someone said, the air hostess was like, excuse me, are you paying cash or are you paying with card? I'm like, sorry? He said, are you, for the water, are you paying cash or card? Seriously, it was not funny then because I'm like, why? Paying for why? Why should I pay for the water? She says, oh, the water is not free, you have to pay for it. And mind you, it was this small little bottle of water, and in my years of traveling, I've not paid for water in the plane before, and I didn't have money. So I'm like, how much? She says 200 shillings. Like, sorry, I don't have. Do that? And in fact, I even spoke to her. I don't get. I
don't want peace.
And
I want problems.
She laughed and said, no, it's actually 200 shillings. And I looked into my purse and like, oh, I have only 50 shillings. And she just said it's fine.
I have to play you a little bit of music to start my story, and it'll make sense of my outfit too.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to get through this thing called life. And these are the words I have to bring.
Okay, don't you just want the song to continue? So, my story is this. I was a fairly new activist in about 1995, and I was hosting my very first event when I worked for CISPAS, the Committee in Solidarity with the People of El Salvador. And it was a tour event, meaning we were touring a Salvadoran labor organizer around the US. And we had an event at the Labor Temple, and I was going to be the MC. And I really wanted to start the event by saying, dearly beloveds, we are gathered here today to get through this thing called, and then I was trying to figure out if I should say life or, I don't know, get through this thing called human rights abuses or something. Anyway, at the last minute, I realized that wasn't really appropriate, and I didn't say that. So this is a like close call story where I almost said something ridiculous based on a Prince song. And afterwards, when I told my buddies what I'd almost did, they were like, oh my God, don't say that. That would not be good. And we've laughed about it ever since.
You get it? If you don't get it, forget about it.
As an activist, it's been a crazy journey so far. After school, myself, I had to volunteer for HOMEF, because I loved the work HOMEF was doing at the time, even as a fresh graduate. So I applied for a job, still in the environmental space, a very big position at the time. But unfortunately, the day I was to have the interview, for that job, I was in a protest ground, so unknowing to me that was the day they were going to pick for the interview. So I was at the protest ground shouting, "A luta continua, we will not accept this injustice," from about 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. So after the whole protest stuff, I went home, and then my then fiancée, who's now my wife, of course, told me, people have been calling you since morning. Your phone is switched off. You're not taking calls and stuff like that. Yeah, good job like this that you're supposed to have. We have lost it because you are protesting. happening, and stuff like that. I quickly rushed to my phone and I discovered an email was already sent, and I was really pissed because I needed that job at the time, but it was the sacrifice I paid for getting a very good job at the time, protest, So, back then it was crazy. My wife, my then fiance, was mad at me. But today, as my wife, sometimes when we reflect back, we want to talk about these things. She'll say, I beg, get out of this place. You that left a good job for protest and stuff like that. Crazy situation, but it's funny now. But back then, it wasn't a funny situation at all.
When I was about to travel to Zambia, that is Livingstone in Zambia, I had a flight from Cameroon to Johannesburg and from Johannesburg to Livingstone. But when I arrived Johannesburg, I realized that my connecting flight to Livingstone was a domestic flight, and I could not travel using domestic flight because I did not have the visa for South Africa. I was stranded in the airport for about 7 hours, and later on my organizers arranged a different flight for me from Johannesburg to Lusaka. When I arrived Lusaka, the flight from Lusaka to Livingstone had already left. I had not to spend 2 extra days in Lusaka before going to Livingstone. Now I laughed at it.
In 2011, we had just started a program in my previous engagement on tax justice. And we had been in a meeting where we were talking about taxation, justice, fairness, resource mobilization, and just generally having a really good lesson on how to pay taxes and mobilize resources so that we can develop our countries. And we thought then, and we told our stories really well on resource mobilization, domestic resource mobilization as a way to drive development in our individual countries. It was a very good story. It had delegates from all over the continent. And once we finished the story, we finished the meeting and trainings, and we're really geared up and fired up. I was a convert, and I was telling myself, this is the time to start resource mobilization, and it starts with me. Off we go after the meeting, and we head out to our different homes. I had one of the delegates in the car who was a foreign delegate, and of course my other colleagues, and I was driving. I did commit a traffic offense, and a traffic cop stopped me. When she stopped me, she asked me whether she could write my name or she could write a fine. Now, when somebody asks you that it's code for, do you want to pay a bribe or do you want me to write a fine for you? And she was speaking to a convert, a taxation convert, and I told her no, write the
Let's
name.
be poor.
So she
Brief.
took out the card, and for over 45 minutes, this lady kept asking the same question. Should I write the name? Or will you do something, Susan? And not a single moment did I get away from what I had decided. I was not giving her the bribe because I was a new convert. I had to pay my taxes, and I made a mistake. I owned the mistake, and therefore I had to pay the fine. And my colleagues kept telling me, Susan, this is very little money. Let's just give her the money and go. I made people sit with me in the car for 45 minutes and above because I was a convert that did not want to pay a bribe. And eventually, she wrote the ticket, and I drove off. And every single person in the car was really angry, including myself. They were angry because I had made them sit for 45 minutes for just a fine. A fine that was, if I had given her a bribe, was going to be around less than $5. But the actual fine was 100,000 shillings, which translated to dollars was about $27. I, on the other hand, was angry because she was breaking the law by asking me for a bribe. And all of us, at the end of the day, were angry. But when we left that place, we laugh about it now because we sat for over 45 minutes to, instead of paying like 10,000 shillings or $5 or even less than $5. And for me, it's funny now. It was annoying then.
What I'm going to share
wasn't funny, but now I laugh at it. Last year, we were preparing to go to COP31 in Brazil. I sold the idea to my founder, was so happy, and we were so happy that we are going to meet each other facially for the first time. I booked the flights. We were discussing on my arrival. I was sick, so he even chatted me that the need for me to visit the health post, which I did. We rescheduled our meeting the following day. So I told him, let me visit the health post once again before we meet. He was happy. After then, I now told him that I was fine for us to meet. He said, okay, let us meet in the evening for dinner. I was happy. When the time comes, he now asked me where I was. And I told him, he said, okay, trying to track each other. At the end of it, we knew we were we realized we were in a different country. He was in Denmark, I was in Brazil. We laughed over it, and now when we remember this, we have to laugh. And we now, eventually, it was not real, and we had to reschedule to meet in subsequently.
2004 was when I had my first longest trip to go to Brazil to attend the 4th La Via Campesina conference. It was my first experience. I was with Rob Sako, who was by then the chairperson for Pelham Zimbabwe. And our main mission was also to get to know and learn more about La Via Campesina, because we had applied to become members of La Via Campesina. Now, without so much information on how all these travel arrangements were made, I was just following Rob Sako, because he was the one familiar with all these travels. And I had no knowledge that he was also holding some money which he was supposed to give me, and I did not bother asking him. So when we arrived in Nairobi on our way back, I tell you guys, this is something I could not even imagine. Our flight was cancelled, and I didn't know that we were supposed to go to get a room, a hotel where we could sleep that night and catch the flight the following day. So what Rob Sako did was say, okay, Elizabeth, now we are going to go to our hotel. I said, okay, yes, I just picked my bag. Then I followed him. We entered in a hotel, and he said, no, we are going to share. We are going to share this room. Wow! I was so startled. What?
Photo, not be juju be that.
And he said, yes. Because we cannot pay for 2 rooms. We don't have such an amount. And I said, why? Why, Rob Sako? Why are you doing this to me? You know, it's something by that time I couldn't imagine sharing a room with a man who is not my husband. And you know our culture.
God have mercy upon us.
Although I'm an activist, but I didn't expect such arrogance to me to happen. So he said, if you don't want, then you just stay outside, then I'm going to sleep. I said, okay, you go and sleep. So I just stayed outside in the lounge until the morning. And he was furious the following morning. No, you are so stupid. You are very stupid. What do you think I can do to you? Huh? I started crying. I cried. But now when we arrived in Harare, we had a follow-up meeting. Now I started sharing this story with the rest of the members. There was a very big laughter. There was a very big laughter. Although to me, it's something which was really hurting, I also started laughing, saying, but I just got furious. But otherwise, what was he going to do? So when I just think about that, I just start laughing and think, oh, that's the life of an activist. Such things can happen when you don't even expect them. So this is one of the stories which I remember very well, which I will never forget. Because since then, the members were just calling me Mrs. Sako, Mrs. Sako. It was just like a joke.
Okay, one event that wasn't funny at the time when I was traveling for a conference, but I think when I look at it now, it's very funny. I was traveling to Belém, Brazil with my colleagues, and somehow we lost our flight in Viracopos. We had to travel to Brasilia and to Maraba before we got to Belém. And I lost my luggage in Brasilia. It was terrible because there's this language barrier. You have to use Google translators to translate a lot of things before you'll be able to communicate. And I lost my luggage. So imagine the stress I went through. I got to Belém. I was begging for clothes to wear. I was only wearing conference t-shirts. Like, it was terrible. And then I would go to the airport every day after an event to, ask if my luggage had arrived. And somehow I've been going to the airport the first day, the second day, the third day, and the fourth day. The fifth day, I got to the airport and my luggage was just sitting in one room, quietly, peacefully. And apparently it had gotten to Belém before me. And I was wondering, is it because of language barrier I wasn't able to communicate well as to where my luggage was? It was very, very sad. But when I look at it right now, it's very, very funny, trust me.
Funny story that took place at Nairobi Airport in 1996. Pelham was having its first board meeting in Uganda in October of that year. It had been launched in Zimbabwe the previous October. Some of us from Zambia and Zimbabwe were already on the plane going to Entebbe, and we were waiting and delayed, and we knew our chairperson was meant to be with us, but he wasn't, and there was an announcement saying that one passenger was missing and couldn't be found. I should tell you that in those days in Nairobi, when you boarded a plane, you'd come down onto the tarmac and there would be 5 or 6 planes there, and they would point which plane you should get on according to where you were going. So we were told, miss the first plane and go on the second plane. That's the one into Entebbe. Anyway, there we were waiting when the chairperson, Dan Mochale from South Africa, appeared in the doorway of the plane, sweating profusely. He came and sat down next to us and was panting quite a bit. He'd obviously been running. And we said to him, what happened? Where were you? And he said, well, I came down and I went to the plane that I thought we were meant to catch, sat down in my seat, allocated seat, and then I looked around and I thought, wow, there are a lot of Asian people traveling to Uganda. That's interesting. And then I got talking to my neighbor, and it came out, fortunately, that this was the plane for Mumbai. And so as soon as I realized, I quickly jumped off and ran here to this plane. And there's a story that is in the folklore of Pelham, and we laughed and laughed.
Today I'm laughing over it, but it wasn't funny when it happened. 2023, I attended a conference at Kenya, and we're having a conversation around clean energy, and precisely on hydro energy. I ended up talking about it as a dirty energy. It wasn't fun.
The last experience I had was where we wanted to have an intervention in American. That's way back 2008 or 9. I can't remember. So we were supposed to train these women on the impact of using gas flaring stack to dry their farm produce. So when we got there, then I was working with Miriam Batsi. So when we got there, the men insisted that there's no way they can communicate with the women of the community without them being in attendance. So we tried to let them know that it was gender specific. We needed to work with these women because the women are the ones who go there to dry their farm products using the gas flaring stack. But even while we convinced them and they left, they actually went and stood behind the hall. They wanted to participate and all of that. So that again shows the level of how women are being disenfranchised, and then the patriarchy is actually high. So these are some of the issues we've encountered, and I think over the years when I look back at those incidents, I laugh because it wasn't really funny at that time because we have to struggle, try to get the meeting going. We also have to ensure that the right information was passed across. So that's my lesson so far.
Around 1999 or so, I was working for Greenpeace, and we were trying to stop genetically modified soya coming into the country in the United Kingdom. And a lot of the GMOs that were coming in were aimed at going into animal feed. They were going to go to be fed to chickens and pigs. So we organized a big action where we had maybe 50 or 100, I can't remember, people all dressed as chickens. And we put on these chicken costumes on all of them, and we all went into the back of a large truck, and we drove this large truck into the port in Liverpool in the north of England where a shipment of soybeans had just landed. We drove into the port, we opened up the back of the truck. We had pillows full of feathers that we'd cut open, and with a sort of squawking and with feathers everywhere, all these chickens came out the back of the truck and started running around, squawking around. And of course it was complete pandemonium. And at that moment, the few of us used the pandemonium to get to the cranes that were unloading the GMO soy off of the ship, and to start climbing up those cranes. And at that moment as well, it started to rain, because this was Britain and it rains all the time. And so you had all of these chickens running around with feathers going everywhere, and the rain coming down, and a couple of us managing to climb up the cranes that unload the ships. And the police freaked out, and they came in with a bunch of dogs, and they let the dogs go on the chickens. So suddenly you had all of these 50 or 100 chickens, people dressed as chickens, running around in the rain, squawking, being chased by dogs, and desperately trying to get somewhere where they could climb up and get away from the chickens, while they were also freezing in the rain. And they were desperate to be arrested, basically, so the dogs didn't catch them. They didn't catch the death of cold. So they all got arrested, and the police arrested something like 50 or 100 chickens. But the couple of us who had managed to already climb up the cranes, we climbed up, and we got to the elevator where the soybeans were being taken off the ship, and we managed to stop that conveyor belt that was taking all the soybeans off this huge GMO soy ship. And we lay down on the conveyor belt full of genetically modified soy pieces and broken soybeans, and we chained ourselves to it. And eventually, once they'd arrested all the chickens and managed to rein in the dogs, the police realized that this had happened, and so they came up and they found us tied or chained onto this conveyor belt, and then they had to try and cut us off the conveyor belt. But in order to use the equipment, they wanted to cut the chains, which were very thick chains. They didn't want it to set fire to all the soybean flour, because there was all the soybean flour. So first of all, they had to spray us down with water. So we were sprayed down with water so that all the soybean flour was wet. And then they cut us off with angle grinders so that we were no longer chained on. And then they took us away and arrested us and put us in jail for the night. And so we were wet and also a bit cold, but at least we'd stopped things, and we hadn't been chased by dogs, unlike the chickens. And then the next morning, we were brought to courthouse, and in this courthouse, they were trying to process all the 50 to 100 people who had all been dressed as chickens, and take them up before the judge. And one after another, they took them up in front of the judge in order to charge them with I think it was mischief or something. And finally it got to my turn, and I stood up in front of the judge, and we had a lawyer who was dealing with all of the 50 to 100 chickens, plus those of us who weren't chickens. And he stood up, and the first thing he said to the judge is, "Your Honour, in his defence, this one was not a chicken." And that was pretty much my defence, was that I was not a chicken. And so I did get a caution, and had promised to be a good person for a year. And ever since then, my kids have made fun of me that my only line of defense that I have is that I'm not a chicken.
My experience was when I was to visit a spill site for the first time. Well, I had visited spill sites before, but I haven't really visited one that was fresh and live, so I didn't know what I was expecting. So when I was going, I wore my best sneakers and my best pair of jeans, like a girly girl that I am. So when we got to the community, we were taken to the spill site, and when we got there, we discovered the whole place was a mess. And in the process, my favorite sneakers and my jean got ruined. I was so pissed off that had happened to me, and in the same way, it kind of made me reflect on the whole experience. I'm just angry about my shoes and my clothes, but people's means of livelihood has just been eroded. So thinking about it now, I just laugh over it. I'm like, why was I mad over a pair of shoes? Why was I mad over a pair of jeans?
My story about an event that happened to me, I think about 2005 or 6. It took place in Botswana. There were about 8 of us, and we were there for, I think, close to a week. And we were discussing about culture, how traditional ecological knowledge is transferred from generation to generation, and the African way of interacting with nature. So there was birds, what happens during birds, what happens when you grow up, what are traditional periods, and what does eldership mean, and also about water, air, fire, and land, and how these are actually connected with how we grow up and how we relate with our environment, and all these things. And on the final day, they say that now we're going to give you a nature experience. You will stay alongside the river for the whole night. It can be dangerous, and there will be wild animals. So when you face wild animals, you should act like this. And they showed us how to react. So they put a stick, and we have to jump the stick to show them whether we agree or not. So adventurous, and I jumped the stick. So I think the majority of us agreed. Only 2 said no, we're not going. So we were led to this riverside. We walked about an hour, and quiet, really quiet area. To be honest, I was frightened. So the leaders were assigned a place for us, and they put me beside the river. And they said that, this is a place that animals used to go to the water to drink. What? You talking about? Are you putting me on the side of the animals? Going to go for water to the river? So I was frightened. So we sat, and we were told not to move around that much. So I sat, and after probably half an hour or something, I heard a noise behind me, and my heart kind of stopped. So I looked around. There was a stick, very flimsy stick. So I dragged that stick and looked behind, and I could see that there is black object and big, and it was making a noise. So I lifted the stick and hit it. It happened to be the plastic that I brought to carry the blanket that I was wearing. It was nothing. I just laughed to myself. And the night has passed away, and we came inside in a circle, and we were talking about our experience. The experience of Fasil, who is the head of the event now. Is very funny. Fasil said that I think by 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning, and he heard a noise. So he said, Just looked around, and we all had our torches. Nothing. And after a few minutes, there's a She was shocked by now, and he just looked around. There was nothing. And we were told that if you see an animal, just get up and lift your blanket up to look big. So Fasil was listening very, very much attentively this time, and the voice in them. Then he got up and lifted his blanket like that. And he just realized that it was his stomach actually making that noise.
I was nearly arrested or put under house arrest. So it was the Oil Watch International Conference in Uganda, and during the planning for the conference, our Ugandan comrades kept telling us that there's a lot of suppression, oppression, intimidation by the government, and monitoring that happens in Uganda. And all of us were like, well, I tried the same thing that happens in our countries. You are used to it. It can't be that bad. However, we were not expecting it. So we got to Uganda, beautiful country, and then we had the meeting on the first day. No problems. Everything was super perfect. And then it was a day for the field trip. So we got to the field trip, and we had some branded shirts that did not say anything discriminatory or anything inflammatory. It was just a general message: stop oil pollution, save the environment. Those kind of very nice messages. That was what was on our branded t-shirts. However, the comrades told us not to wear the t-shirts. And we're like, why? This is so beautiful. We spent a lot of money printing them. Why shouldn't we wear it? And they're like, no, because if you wear it, it's going to attract a lot of attention to you, and the government will likely not like it. And we're like, you guys are too dramatic. While we were yet speaking, we saw a lot of policemen surrounding our hotel. In their numbers, there were so many, and we were all so afraid. Everyone was afraid. It was wondering what was going on. And the interesting thing was that they said that Nigerians came to come and stop oil extraction in Uganda. And that was very, very funny and scary at the same time, because in this meeting, we had a lot of Africans. We had South Africans, we had Kenyans, we had people from the DRC, we had people from Mozambique, we had people from Mali, from different parts of the continent, Ghana, Senegal, all of them, comrades, were there. So we were wondering, why are they singling out Nigerians? However, they now asked us to bring our passports, and everyone was like, no, we're not going to give you a passport. We're only going to show you our visa, our printed out visa, to show that we are in your country legally. Anyway, after back and forth, they said, okay, you guys are under hotel arrest. So we had to stay in the hotel, eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, and chat on our phones because they didn't want to see us meeting as a group. They were very scared of that. They were very worried about us meeting as a group. So we had to stay in the hotel, and the very next day we headed back into town. It was a very scary experience, but at the same time, it's now that I think about it, it was quite funny, because I'm like, how would they have been able to handle over 70 people in the police, 70 different nationals in their police station? I guess they might not have arrested them, but who knows? However, this is some of the things that we face as being an activist, and that would never stop us from still being an activist and speaking the truth to power.